Hey friends, it's Missy again. Thanks so much for stopping by today. I'm back with a new layout for Hip Kit Club, and I'm still using the 2019 October kits. And I'm going to be using this beautiful Pink Fresh Studio pattern paper as my background today. And I'm going to use this paper from Truly Grateful by Paige Evans also. And I've got 3 pictures here. These are from 2012 of my daughter. She used to be obsessed with leaves, and all 3 of these pictures are different sizes, and that's okay. I'm going to make it work. And then this is one of the exclusive cut files for this month. I am going to use it as a stencil. It's a bunch of rows of leaves, and you could use this in so many different ways, but I thought I would use it as a stencil to create some really fun shapes and textures on this background. And so that's where I'm going to start. I'm just using some Liquitex modeling paste with my palette knife there, and I'm going to very carefully just scrape it over the stencil. And this winds up being kind of a diagonal design. I hadn't really decided at this point where my pictures were going to go or how I was going to organize them on the page. I just wanted to go for it and start making my background and see where it took me. And modeling paste is awesome. If you've never used it over a stencil, it's really thick, creamy paste, and when it dries, it's really rough and bumpy when you touch it with your hands, and it works really, really cool when you add watercolor or paint or gelatos or anything like that on top of it. And yeah, so you're going to see here in a few minutes how it works if you've never used it. It can get a little messy, but I always think it's worth it in the long run. If you're a fan of texture and stencils, then definitely give it a go. All right, so I'm let that dry, and you can kind of see the shape there of the leaves. So I'm gonna let that continue to dry 100%. And then I thought instead of using this paper as trees, I would just hand cut leaves out of each of the trees, because I love all the colors of these trees, but since my daughter is looking for leaves in the pictures, I thought that I would go with leaves. And there are already a ton of leaves in the kits. There are acetate leaves, die cut leaves, different almost like a vellum type of leaf. I'm not quite sure what the material is, but if you've got the kits, then you know what I'm talking about. But I've already used a lot of those up, so I thought I would make my own leaves and just cut them out of these little trees, and it turned out really, really well. Didn't take me that long because leaves are pretty easy to cut. So my background's dry, and I'm just going to start to play around here with how I want the leaves. I thought that I would sort of create them in a falling pattern, kind of in the same diagonal direction as the background modeling paste, and then just kind of scatter them, kind of like they're falling from the sky. And I'm trying to, make sure the colors are scattered around and not, all the pinks together and all the greens together. I have a lot of yellow and green in the pictures, so I want to make sure you can see all the other colors also. So I like that idea. I think that's where I'm going to go, but in the meantime, I've got to fix up my background here. So I'm going to wind up using all 3 of the Lindy's sprays. Okay, now this is going to be an experiment. I have not used any gesso on this background, and you're going to see right away why I use gesso. Okay, I sprayed that directly on to the paper, use a little bit of water, and it's really not smudging or spreading, but look what happens. I try to dab it up a little bit. It's automatically soaked through. Look at that. That's the back of the paper. It automatically just soaks through. And that's what happens to paper. I mean, I'm sure you've all wet paper before. It just soaks right through. So the gesso is going to prevent that from happening. So I decide to just stop myself right there and add some gesso. And right away, I put way too much on there. So I don't want this to cover up all the texture of the modeling paste. So I wind up scooping some back into the bottle, and then I just use my finger to smudge it down and basically cover all of the area where I put the modeling paste. And the harder I scrape and smudge it around, it's going to go on top of the modeling paste, but it's also going to go in between all the areas around where the leaf shapes are. And so I just keep smudging and pressing. I do bring a napkin over and kind of dab some of it up because I did squeeze a little bit too much on there, but in the long run it works out, and I just keep smudging. So now that's dry, and now my paper is ready, and you'll be able to see the difference now that the gesso is on there. So I'm going to go back to that Grab a Guy Gold, and my nozzle is kind of leaking for whatever reason, so I had to be careful when I shook it up. But now when I add water, I can freely spread it around the page, and it's going to not soak through the paper because the gesso is basically a barrier between the paint and the paper. So this is the Bougainvillea Fuchsia, I believe it's called. Very, very pretty. It looks red when you put it down, but it's definitely a beautiful fuchsia pink color. And then when it's going to blend with the yellow, you know, it's going to get a little bit of an orange, I almost said orange flavor. I must be thinking of popsicles here because these colors are so bright. Not flavor, shade of orange. And then this is the purple color. It's called, what is it called? Sweet Violet Purple Teal. And it's got some blue shimmery powder in there. So I like the way all three of these colors from the color kit blend together. I think they're really pretty, and they match all the little tree/leaves that I cut. It does tend to dry a little bit lighter, so don't be alarmed when you spray these colors on top of gesso, and if you do add water like I do, don't be alarmed if they dry very, very light. So just keep adding to it, and you will eventually get the color that you want. And you know, that's a good thing because you get the option of going really light, or you can keep going and make it darker and bolder. It just depends on the look you're going for here. So I really like the effect of using a heat gun to kind of push the color around the page, and you can really see how cool it looks. You can see how it's kind of going in between all the modeling paste leaves, and it just sort of, I don't know, it's like magic to me. I love watching the color kind of run and blend and spread, and I like to use my brush like this while it's drying. Yeah, it's just fun to do, and I like the way it just kind of leaks all around all those shapes. And so yeah, I'm going to have a little bit of a purple section, a little bit of a reddish pink section, and then some yellow. I didn't want to do too much of each color because I've got so much color going on with those leaves. I wanted to make sure that my background colors didn't overpower the leaves. It still winds up being bright, but I think it works out in the end. So that's almost dry. It's not 100% dry, but I'm going to bring the photos back and kind of see where I might want to put them and how it's going to look. And then I'm going to play around with the leaves again. I decided to go with a little bit more of a hot pink color here on the pink section. So I just brought out a gelato from my stash and do a little bit of smudging on top of the Lindy's spray here. Not a lot, just a little bit to really make it a little more pink. I didn't want it to look too red, but when it blended with the yellow, it did sort of take on a different shade. So I like how that is looking, and I think that the picture of her up close in that yellow tank top really pops against the pink and the purple. So to soften it up just a little bit, I do come back over it with a little bit of gesso, because like I said, I don't want the background colors to kind of hide the leaves, because sometimes if your background is too bright or it's the same color as all of your embellishments, then you kind of lose some of the effects of the embellishments. And I don't want things to blend in. I want everything to look intentional, but at the same time I want everything to stand out, if that makes sense. I want the background to stand out, I want the leaves to stand out, and I want the photos to stand out. So yeah, I'm going to kind of see what I've got here. I may need to make some adjustments, but I'm really liking how it's looking. And I always say that backgrounds tend to look like a hot mess while they're in progress, and then when you put everything back on top of it, it transforms into a whole different look. And I love how these hanging / falling leaves are looking. I think the colors are so pretty, and I like how it looks on the background. I think it's neat. I do want to come back in over to the left, or not the left, the right shortly, and I'm going to add a little bit more yellow since a lot of the yellow got covered up. But in the meantime, I'm going to let the background kind of dry and rest, and then I'm going to go to work on layering my photos. And I'm just using some tissue paper. I do this quite a lot. If I don't layer a bunch of things behind my photos, like pocket life cards or papers, I like to have some kind of something behind it. And I like the tissue paper because it's subtle, but yet it's kind of messy and crooked. You know, it looks torn, it's not perfect, and it looks a little bit distressed. And I like that look around the pictures. And I'm going to pop all the pictures up with some adhesive foam, and then I decided to pop up some of the leaves. Some of them I'm going to glue flat down, and then some of them I'm going to pop up with the foam. And I really like how this is looking. You can really see the dimension from the side, but I want to kind of go back to the bottom right section like I just mentioned and add a little bit more yellow. And then I am actually going to spray this down, and then some of it is going to get right where I did not add gesso. You can see there on the right where it soaked right through the paper. I'm not able to add water to that area and smudge it. It's not going to smudge. It went right through. And that's okay because I can fix it. Never fear, even if I missed a spot with gesso. And most of it's going to get covered up anyway. But here's what I do to change it, is I just go back over it with some gesso. You probably knew that was going to happen, right? That's always my answer to fix a problem in scrapbooking, is smudge some gesso on it. And you can still see the difference though in the shade of that yellow. Look how different it looks when I spray it on top of the modeling paste and the gesso versus how it looks with no gesso. Totally different color. I think that's so interesting how mixed media can completely change colors of something. I love that because it's always a surprise when you spray it down, you know, on top of gesso versus not. And yeah. All right, so I'm going to add those photos back, and I'm going to layer the smaller one on top of the bigger one just because I didn't want them to be perfectly straight because they are different sizes. But I think when they're scattered around the layout like this, it's not really that noticeable, and I don't even think it really matters. I printed these photos at different times, and so I didn't even really pay attention to the ones I'd already printed of what size they were. And so when I finally gathered all three of them together, I realized that they were all different sizes, but it's okay. All right, so I'm adding in some tangled thread here. I've got the dark blue, I've got the yellow, the light peachy pink color, the darker pink, and then the minty green. I don't wind up using all of them. I don't think I do. But before I glue the photos down, I just want to make sure that I have thread in places where I want it. And it's just adding some texture, it's adding some color. You know, I didn't want anything that was going to be distracting because, I mean, for what I have here already is pretty busy. You know, I've got a busy background, I've got the busy colors of the leaves, and then I've got 3 photos. And so now I kind of went through the issue of, oh yeah, a title. Where's it going to go? What's it going to be? So I found this pocket life card that's got this word beautiful on it, and I love the color. It matches the background. And so I cut that out, and then I realized I've looked at these stickers, the Alpha Puffy word sticker sheets, so many times, and I just realized that this one had the word leaves on it, and I thought, okay, this layout is about leaves. We have to use this one. So yeah, I'm going to mix and match with these little small puffy alphas, and the title is going to be very simple. She loves leaves. I mean, yep, she went through a phase where she really did love leaves. And that was this phase of these photos. And so I want to try to fit this word beautiful in there somewhere. It's not going to go right there, but that's where it's at for the time being. And then I went through some of the die cuts and the other embellishments from the kit. Most of these things are exclusive, and there's really not a lot of space left. If you look at the page, you know, I don't really have a lot of open space. Well, I do have open space on the upper right and the bottom left, but I want to leave that blank. I don't want to clog it up with excess embellishments that don't really belong there. I'm adding glue here to the alphas because things never stick to gesso. And we're using our punches this week. And so this is one of my very old Martha Stewart leaf punches, and I wanted to add some gold to this layout. So I just went ahead and punched out a couple of these leaves. And then I'm going to go back a couple months. I can't remember if this was last month or the month before, but this is one of the other Lindy's shaker powders that we got in glittering gold, and it is so shimmery and beautiful. And so I'm just activating it with water and then just painting it on. And then I'm going to add in a little bit more of that Grab-A-Guy gold from this month's kit, and this is going to really make these leaves pop because it's still a gold color. It's just got a little bit more of a yellow tint to it, a little bit of a darker gold, and it looks really pretty on these leaves. And I didn't do any gesso or anything, but yeah, they turned out so shimmery and pretty. Look at these. That didn't take any time at all. Look at the shimmer, so pretty. Love it. So I'm going to scatter these around the layout as well, and this is just going to give some little pops of gold and some shimmer. And yeah, I love how those turned out. Old Martha Stewart punches to the rescue. I collected those, like every time I would go into Michael's years ago, I would only buy a punch. Every time I would go in there, I'd buy one thing and it was a punch, and I would use my 40% off coupon. And so I've collected, you know, a lot of those over the years, and I still have them. So anyway, here you can kind of see the detail and the dimension from the adhesive foam. Love how that's turning out. And like I said, I don't really have a lot of, you know, room to embellish. I didn't want to add any more leaves. I didn't want to add any more different styles of leaves since I kind of have the same shape of leaf going here. And I've already got my title, but I still wanted to use this beautiful that I fussy cut out. And I am going to use this little banner tab here on top of the photo. I didn't want to clutter up the photos either, but I'm going to do this little beautiful piece down here above where I'm going to write my journaling. And then I found this little tiny die cut that says always, and this little piece here that says cherish this. I'm going to stick that above the top photo there, and then put the beautiful piece right where you see it. I'm going to glue that down, and then this layout is pretty much finished. I'm going to use my T-square ruler here to draw my lines for journaling, and I'm having to be careful because there's some specks of the modeling paste there still, and there's no way you're writing over modeling paste very smoothly. So I'm going to use my gold metallic pen that I use quite a bit for my journaling, and then I added the date, and that is the final layout. I love how this turned out. It's simple, yet it still has a lot going on. And I really love how those leaves turned out. Even though they were trees, I made them into leaves, and I think they turned out really cool. I think the background was a lot of fun to make. Yeah, you know, you don't always have to use cut files as cut files. They make great stencils too, and I still have it, so I can use it on a layout because it's not ruined. It just has some modeling paste on it, but it's still usable. So yeah, multiple uses for cut files, but I have a lot of close-ups here of all the dimension, all the details, the colors, and the textures. Let me know if you have any questions about any of the kits or anything at all, and I will see you guys in my next video. I hope you have a great week. Thank you so much for watching.